I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I've read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is a former CEO, executive coach, and mentor, five-time Ironman. He's helping leaders find clarity, live their values, and lead with purpose and impact. No other than Mr. Dusty Holcomb.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to this conversation. This is so fun. Thank you for having me.
Welcome on Book 101, Mr. Dusty. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yes, absolutely. As you mentioned, I'm a former CEO, but I would say I've spent 28 years in corporate leadership, having the distinct privilege and honor to lead others. And man, I've just been so blessed in my life to be able to serve others and realize that that was my life calling and mission. And I decided to start my own firm as a leadership consultant to help others unlock their potential, and have had learned a lot of lessons along the way. And it's a good opportunity to bring my personal mission statement to light to enable and empower the success of others.
Mr. Dusty Holcomb, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. And today, let's talk about, I think everybody wants this topic, navigating the challenges of empowerment, delegation, and accountability. What's the secret to success?
The secret to success for empowerment, delegation, and accountability is to start with clarity of and for yourself. It amazes me, and I've worked with hundreds of leaders over the years who will get sideways and get stuck and say, why don't people do it the way that I want them to? And then I simply ask them this question: do you believe that they fully and completely understand your expectations? Well, they always say, yes, of course they do. I said, what if we ask them? And people turn pale and gawk and go, well, I shouldn't have to tell them what I want. Yes, you should. You should explain clearly what you expect, what the outcomes are, so that you can give them the autonomy, the empowerment they need to deliver on that. And so few leaders actually invest the time, effort, and energy in defining and understanding for themselves what their expectations are. But when they get it right, magic happens. But until they do that, until somebody invents a magic mind reader, getting clear on your expectations is the first step in creating accountability.
Mr. Dusty, how do you distinguish between delegating a task and truly empowering a person?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, tasks can be delegated and people are responsible for doing them. But when you really delegate effectively, you are talking not about the task, not about how things get done, but the outcomes you need them to deliver. So we don't talk about delegation through the lens of I need you to do task A, B, C, and D. Instead, we talk about I need you to deliver result A by time frame B. That's the outcome that we want. And then you empower someone to figure out the how on their own. And so many leaders get sideways. They spend all their time and energy, especially if they were good at doing it before themselves, especially if they were the experts. They spend all their energy on the how and not on the what needs to be done by when. And that's a really important distinction. It's subtle, but it's incredibly important, because if you don't do that, you're only going to be delegating people to do the task, the checklist, and they're going to have to check in with you. That's not what you want. You want them to deliver the result.
Deliver the result indeed. Why do these three concepts, empowerment, delegation, and accountability, so often fall apart in practice? Where does the change usually break?
Yeah, it's a four-part process to do it and do it well. Number one is defining with clarity your expectations. Now, you can get it in your head and you can communicate it, but what you have to ask for is commitment. You have to ask for understanding from the other side of the party. And so, step one, clarifying expectations, gain and garnering commitment to meet those expectations, garnering understanding that, person has, they understand what it is you're asking for. That's the first place that you often find a gap. In fact, whenever there's a problem with delegation or accountability, we always start there because that's the first place. Step number two, where things fall apart, is we don't confirm a system of measure. We don't actually capture the way we're going to measure progress, the way we're going to define success. So a leader will say, hey, we had great clarity of expectations, but we didn't actually invest the time, effort, and energy in defining how we're going to measure it. And there's nothing worse than getting to the end of a project and somebody saying, well, hey, I delivered it. And you're going, no, 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 no. That's not what I wanted at all. I wanted this. Well, then why didn't you say so? It's because we didn't confirm a system of measure that we both agree to. Step three, the third part of this process when we see things falling apart, is when we don't create a culture of coaching and training. We don't create accountability loops. We don't create a feedback loop where we make it safe for someone to come in and check in and tell us, hey, I'm off course, I'm off target, etc. Nor do we communicate and ask for their commitment to telling us that. Like I always told my leadership teams, hey, look, my number one request of you, my number one challenge for you, my number one expectation is that you will raise the flag if and when this is going sideways. Until such time, I'm going to expect you to deliver your committed result on time and on target. But your commitment to me is that you will raise the flag if this goes sideways. That's where we often see it going haywire. And when we don't have, and as leaders, we haven't invested in creating a communication cycle of coaching and training that allows them to raise the flag. And the fourth part's an entire question in and of itself, but it's the accountability loop. And what I mean by that, because there's two types of accountability. There's accountability of self, and we all want that as leaders. We all want people who are self accountable. They hold themselves accountable to the standard, they hold themselves accountable for following through. But what most leaders fail to recognize is during this commitment process, we have committed to the other person that we will follow through, that we will check in. And if they fail to honor their commitment, if they don't follow through, well, then if we don't actually do our part of the equation, if we don't follow through, we don't do the managerial accountability aspect, we're failing in our commitment. And in that case, we're not making and we're not creating an expectation. All we've done is deliver a recommendation. It's a two-part street. They have committed to deliver the result. We have committed to follow through on the expectation, and we have to do our part.
Very well said, Mr. Dusty. Beautifully, beautifully articulated. What is the most common misconception leaders have about what accountability actually looks like? It is a
Ooh,
punishment or something else?
oh, it's a great question. I love this. All right, so here's what the most common misperception is. Most common challenge that leaders have is they think that accountability is something they do to someone else, and it's not that at all. Accountability is the honoring of commitments. That's what accountability is. I can delegate responsibility, but accountability must be received. It must be confirmed. It must be acted upon by that other party. And so accountability isn't something we do to someone. It's a commitment that we both make. Party A says, I will commit to doing this. Me as the leader says, I commit to following up. It's not something we do to somebody. It's a commitment that we make. And if we break it, we're not leading. We're just making great suggestions about how they ought to spend their time.
On the leader's mindset and hurdles, what are the biggest internal fears or mindset blocks that prevent a leader from efficiency or letting go and empowering their team?
Yeah, most often the leader is in a position where they have been the expert in the thing, whatever that thing is. They have been the best at doing it. So the block they have to overcome is, in all likelihood, not always, but in most cases, in many cases, they can do it better than the person they're delegating it to. So the mental block that they have to get past is allowing someone else to deliver the outcome differently than they would have done it. And that's a real challenge because like you got to your position because you're good at what you do. And so therefore you expect someone else to do it the same way you would do it. But we aren't talking about how things get done. We're talking about the results that need to be delivered. That's the most common challenge that we see with leaders. And the frustration point that a leader has is that they, when they come talk to me, is they say, they aren't doing it the way I would. And I always go, well, why does that matter? Yeah, are they delivering the result? Well, yes. Well, then why do you care? Well, then I care because of ABC. Great. Are you coaching them on that? Are you having the conversation? Are you giving them the feedback about why that matters? Because if you're not, all you're doing is micromanaging the process. You're not empowering them to deliver the result. And you've got to set the guardrails. Like the principle here, the first principle of great leadership is you have to be clear for yourself what matters and the result that you want them to deliver. If you don't, then you're just going to get into this micromanagement doom loop where all you're doing is managing how they're doing the work. And that's not effective.
How does a leader's identity, often tied to being an expert problem solver, need to evolve to become an effective empowerer?
Yeah, the leader who has been in the seat and done the work, they're the best in the world at what they do. As you move up in an organization or as you increase your span and scope of responsibility, you can't be the best at doing the thing anymore. What you have to be able to do is cast the vision and teach people how to deliver against those expectations. So when they're the best at it, they've got to learn to let go of that process and teach people here's what great looks like. Here's what success looks like. Come to me for feedback. Check in with me on how things are going. But this is where we're going. And so when we navigate from being the best contributor to the mission and we go and move into a position of being the person who sets the vision, defines the mission, what we have to do is we have to make sure people are understanding of that and that they get it. That our job as leaders is nothing more than to be an exceptionally good dot connector. We need to connect dots for people from where we're going to where we are and why what they do matters. And that works in delegation, it works in all the areas of leadership. We have to connect the dots for them so that they know what it is they need to do, how they need to decide, how they need to act to deliver the results that move us towards our vision. When we step down from that vision casting, mission casting, and responsibility and accountability commitments level and get down into the work, what we're doing is we're working in the business, we're not working on the business. And that's the navigation point that leaders have to make sure they get right.
On the practicalities of delegation, what is your framework for deciding what is to delegate? Are there a certain tasks that should never be delegated?
Yeah, the way I like to think about this and the way we coach leaders to think about this is simple is always better. You know, if you think about the work that you're doing, the first lens is how much time do you spend on this thing, this project, this task, this initiative? And is it strategically important? So if you look at time involved on one axis and you look at strategic importance on another axis, if you're spending a lot of time on it and it's of low strategic importance, it is ripe for delegation because it's ripe for teaching someone else how to do the work, what's important. If it is of very high strategic importance and a very high time consumer, that still may be something you want to delegate, but you're going to have different guardrails around it. You're going to have very different sets of controls to make sure that it is done and done well. The very simple framework and lens that I like to think about, and I challenge every leader to think about in regards to their work, is when you are spending time on something and you've identified how much time it takes and you've identified its strategic importance, answer this simple question: is this work that only you can do? Is this work that only you can do? Because if you're spending a significant amount of your time doing work that others could do, that you aren't the best person to do. You are intentionally sub-optimizing your results. We find that leaders in large, and this is a broad statement, but I found it to be very, very true, spend about 80% of their time on the things that create 20 they spend about 80% of their time on the things that create the maximal value, only about 20% of the effort. So it's the Pareto principle in reverse. They spend 80% of their time doing the things that create all the value. But they only actually invest 20% of it. They're not actually spending all their time on the things that create value. They spend it lost in the management, lost in the bureaucracy, lost in all that stuff. If instead they could spend all their time on the things that only can do, that they create all the value with, like they actually unlock tremendous potential. So they don't do that. And we spend most of our time as leaders locked into things that don't create value, things that are not unique to our own skills, talents, capabilities, and responsibilities. And that's where we have to spend our time. If someone else can do it, maybe even better than you, it ought to be delegated.
Mr. Dusty, as executive coach and mentor, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
My short term goal is to help leaders unlock their potential. We're working and growing our business to enable hundreds of leaders to make those journeys to become more purpose driven and more impactful for their organizations. And our long term goal, our big, hairy, audacious, scary, we don't know how we're going to get it done goal, is to impact the lives of 100 million leaders over the next 10 years.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Dusty, and looking forward for more success. What
We're,
would be your what would be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be like you?
um, look inward. The number one thing that you have to do to be impactful as a leader is recognize that the first principle, it's not about you. It's not about you. It's about those that you lead. It's about those that you serve. It's about achieving the mission for the customer. So, first principle, it's not about you. The second is you must lead yourself first. If you want to lead a team or you want to lead an organization, you must invest the time, effort, and energy to lead yourself first. Leading yourself first isn't selfish. It's the first step in unlocking the potential of others because you set the standard for what great looks like in your organizations.
Thank you for that advice, Mr. Dusty. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Yeah, I'll start with one that I read every single year, and it's an old book, but it's tremendously powerful. And it's Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, and it's all about the power of choice. In between a stimulus and a response, we have decision authority. We have agency. So I read that book every single year. It's incredibly powerful for leaders because we have to make sure that we make good choices. The second book would be Wisdom of the Bullfrog by Admiral Bill McRaven. It is the single most calorically dense primer on leadership advice that I have read in a number of years. I give it away to all of our leadership cohorts in our leadership teams and our executive coaching packages because I find it to be so incredibly powerful. And Bill McRaven talks about how leadership is simple, but not easy. It's the single best primer I've found on leadership in the last 10 years.
Thank you for that recommended book, Mr. Dusty. And can you please expound this phrase on your website? You can't scale chaos. Start with clarity instead.
Yeah. What happens with leaders and with teams as we grow, all the world's coming at you. And so we get into a reactive mode. And so when we think about leadership and we think about chaos, we are reacting to the environment. Instead, we need to step back, pause, identify and articulate what's most important first to get clear on what really matters. That's when you can make the best decisions. That's when we can say no to a lot of really, really good things that get in the way of our progress. You can't scale chaos. Can't scale when you're stuck in reaction mode. You have to get out ahead of it. You have to get clean air and you have to decide in advance what's most important so you can say yes to the most important things.
Very well said, Mr. Dusty. And for the leader's journey, if a leader recognizes they are struggling with one of those three areas, what is the single most impactful place for them to start improving?
The single most impactful place for a leader to start improving is to give themselves the time and space to think. I recommend to leaders that they spend 15 minutes a day planning their day. Now, it's very tactical, and you may go, why is this important? This is not leadership. I'm supposed to be living for a year from now. Everything we want to be a year from now starts with what we're going to do today. Spend 15 minutes identifying and articulating the three most important outcomes, not things to do, but outcomes that must be delivered today and how you're going to drive influence. That's the first place to start.
How can a leader who inherits a disempowered team begin to shift the culture toward one of the ownership and accountability?
The first thing the leader needs to do is to really ask and answer for themselves 5 questions. When they can answer these questions for themselves, they need to connect the dots for their team members. A disempowered team, a disenfranchised team, they need to connect the dots for that team. Now, here are those 5 questions. Question number 1: why are we here? What's our purpose beyond making money? Question number 2: where are we going? What's our vision? What is it we're trying to achieve? Question number 3: how are we going to get there? What's our plan? And question number 4, and that I find that most organizations, most leaders do not do questions 4 and 5 very well. Question number 4: what is it that I do as a team member that contributes towards our plan, towards our vision, and towards our purpose? And question number 5: what's in it for me? When a leader can ask and answer those questions for themselves and of themselves, they can then work with the team. And I don't care if they're disenfranchised or the best team on earth, when they can work with that team and make sure that the team can answer those questions. Because if the team can't connect the dots between what they do, why it matters, and what's in it for them, they're never going to unlock discretionary effort. And that's the leader's job, to unlock discretionary effort.
Mr. Dusty, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my Abstract Essay is already in fifth season, Abstract Poetry in second season, and my Book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in second season, and my Food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast, Law 101 and Mental Health 101, Love Letters in third season, and Movie 101 Review and Music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Dusty, finally, if you had to distill the secret to success in navigating these challenges into one piece of advice, what would it be?
My one piece of advice would be to take the time to step back, reflect, identify what is most important, what it is that you need to do, and who is it you need on your journey with you. Make the phone call. Don't lead alone. Have a mentor alongside you that can help you see around the corners.
Mr. Dusty Holcomb, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your business, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I would love your listeners to, if they're stuck in leadership, to go to leadershipgapassessment.com, fill out a very simple 9-question quiz, and they can figure out where they're stuck and what they need to do to get unstuck.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Dusty Holcomb, because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering leaders to come. So, Mr. Dusty, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Daniel. It's an absolute pleasure.
More to come, people. See you soon.